The great crystal chamber of the Galactic Council pulsed with nervous energy. Representatives from 12 different star systems had gathered for an emergency session, their forms casting strange shadows in the ethereal blue light. The air itself seemed to hum with tension. Ambassador Zix of the Kepler Federation stood at the center of the circular chamber, her 6 arms gesturing frantically as she addressed the council. Her voice, normally calm and measured, cracked with urgency. "Council members, you must listen to me. The humans, they are not what they appear to be." A ripple of dismissive clicks and chirps echoed through the chamber. The massive bulk of General Threx, leader of the Proxima Military Alliance, shifted in his floating throne. His 4 eyes rolled in unison as he spoke. "Zix, we've heard these warnings before. The humans are a primitive species barely capable of leaving their own solar system. They've only just discovered faster-than-light travel. What possible threat could they pose to civilizations that have ruled the galaxy for millennia?" Zix's crystalline skin flickered with agitation. She had spent months gathering intelligence, watching, learning. What she had discovered chilled her to her core. "That is exactly what makes them dangerous, Threx. They are unpredictable. Their entire history is one of constant warfare, adaptation, and survival against impossible odds. They have turned their own planet into a training ground for conflict." The chamber fell silent except for the gentle hum of the life support systems. Ambassador Quen of the Andromeda Collective, whose translucent form seemed to shimmer in the light, leaned forward with interest. "Explain yourself, Zix. What evidence do you have?" Zix activated her neural interface, and holographic displays materialized around the chamber. Images of Earth appeared. Cities reduced to rubble, massive. Machines of war. Humans in protective suits walking through radioactive wastelands. "Look at their world," Zix continued, her voice growing stronger. "They have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, and wars that would have destroyed any other species. They have not just survived, they have thrived. They adapt to any environment, overcome any obstacle." The images shifted to show humans in spacesuits working on massive construction projects in the void. Teams of scientists in laboratories pushing the boundaries of physics. Soldiers training in environments that would kill most other species within minutes. They call it human ingenuity, but it is something far more dangerous. It is the ability to find solutions where none should exist, to fight when any rational being would surrender, to turn their own weaknesses into strengths. General Threx's laughter boomed through the chamber. "You speak of them as if they are gods, Zix. They are barely more advanced than the Stone Age species we catalogued in the Outer Rim territories." "That is where you are wrong," Zix replied, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. "I have seen their military history. They have a saying, 'If you find yourself in a fair fight, you didn't plan properly.' They do not fight with honor. They fight to win by any means necessary." The holographic display shifted again, showing strategic analyses of human conflicts throughout their history. The room grew quieter as the representatives began to see patterns emerging. Patterns of asymmetric warfare, psychological manipulation, and tactical innovation that defied conventional military doctrine. They turned their enemies' strengths against them, Zix continued. They study weakness and exploit it without mercy, and now they have discovered faster-than-light travel. How long do you think it will be before they discover us? Ambassador Quen's form pulsed with concern. "What do you propose we do? We make contact now on our terms. We establish diplomatic relations while we still have the advantage of superior technology and numbers. We guide their expansion, contain their growth, make them our allies, rather than wait for them to become our enemies." The silence that followed was broken by the harsh grating sound of General Threx's dismissal. "Ridiculous. You would have us cower before a species that still kills each other over resources and territory? The Proxima Military Alliance has conquered 17 star systems. Our fleets number in the thousands. Our weapons can crack planets. You seriously suggest we should fear a species that has not even established a single colony beyond their own moon?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Vorn of the Beta Centauri Trade Coalition spoke up, her voice tinged with greed. The humans do show promise as potential trading partners. Their world is rich in resources we need, and their primitive technology makes them ideal for exploitation. I mean, beneficial trade relationships. Zix's skin flared bright red with frustration. You are not listening. This is not about their current capabilities. It is about their potential. Every species we have encountered follows predictable patterns of development. The humans follow no pattern. They are an anomaly, a wild card that could disrupt the entire galactic order. But the damage was done. The council members had made up their minds. To them, humans were just another primitive species to be cataloged, studied, and eventually absorbed into the galactic community, or eliminated if they proved troublesome. The vote was taken quickly. Zix's proposal for immediate diplomatic contact was rejected by a margin of 11-1. Instead, the council voted to continue monitoring the humans from a distance while focusing on more pressing matters in the core systems. As the chamber began to empty, Zix remained behind, staring at the holographic images of Earth that still flickered in the air. She had failed to make them understand. The warnings had been ignored. In the depths of space, human exploratory vessels continued their journey outward, their crews unaware that they were being watched. The first contact protocols they carried spoke of peace and cooperation, of joining a galactic community as equals. But Zix knew the truth that the Council refused to see. When the humans finally encountered the galactic civilizations, it would not be as supplicants seeking membership in an established order. It would be as conquerors who had already won a war their enemies didn't even know had begun. Chapter 7. 2. First Contact. 3 months after the Council's decision, Captain Sarah Chen of the UES Endeavour was having what she would later describe as the most boring day in the history of space exploration, when her ship's long-range sensors detected something that changed everything. "Captain, I'm picking up massive energy signatures ahead," called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from the sensor station. "Multiple vessels, configuration unknown." Chen set down her coffee and moved to the bridge's main display. The Endeavour was humanity's most advanced exploration vessel, equipped with the latest in alien detection technology developed after the discovery of FTL travel. But nothing had prepared them for this. "How many ships, Rodriguez?" 17, ma'am. "And Captain?" "They're big. The largest one is nearly 3 times the size of a core world battleship." Chen felt her pulse quicken. This was it. First contact with an alien civilization. Everything they had trained for, planned for, hoped for. She activated the ship's communication array. "All stations, this is the captain. We are initiating first contact protocols. I want all departments ready for anything." The alien fleet had detected them as well. Within minutes, the Endeavour's communications system crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The voice that emerged was melodious and strangely beautiful, speaking perfect English. "Human vessel, this is Fleet Commander Kess of the Galactic Council Expeditionary Force. You are ordered to maintain your current position and prepare to be boarded." Chen exchanged glances with her first officer, Commander Park. The tone was not what they had expected from a peaceful first contact. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Endeavour. We come in peace and seek dialogue with representatives of your civilization." There was a pause before Kess responded, and when she did, her voice carried an edge of impatience. "Captain Chen, you will surrender your vessel immediately. Your species has been classified as a potential threat to galactic stability. You and your crew will be transported to a processing facility for evaluation." The bridge fell silent. Chen could feel the eyes of her crew upon her, waiting for her decision. This was not the diplomatic first contact humanity had dreamed of. "Commander Kess, I must respectfully decline your request. We are peaceful explorers on a mission of scientific discovery. We pose no threat to anyone." "Captain, you do not understand the gravity of your situation. You are outnumbered 17-1. Your vessel, while impressive for a primitive species, is no match for our technology. I am offering you the opportunity to surrender with dignity." Chen looked at the tactical display. The alien ships had formed a perfect encirclement around the Endeavour. Their energy signature suggested weapon systems far beyond anything humanity had ever developed. By all logical calculations, surrender was the only rational choice. But Captain Sarah Chen was human. Commander Park signaled the fleet back home. Full tactical data burst, priority alpha. "Captain, they're jamming our communications." Park replied, his voice tense. "Rodriguez, what's our weapons status?" "All systems. Nominal, Captain. But against 17 ships of that size, I know the odds, Lieutenant." Chen moved to her command chair and sat down slowly, her mind racing through possibilities. "Kess, I appreciate your offer, but I'm afraid I have to decline. We'll be leaving now." The response came back immediately, and this time Kess's voice was sharp with anger. "Captain, you are making a grave mistake. This is your final warning." "Probably," Chen replied. "But it's our mistake to make. Helm, take us out of here, maximum acceleration." What happened next would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. Instead of engaging the alien fleet in a hopeless direct confrontation, the Endeavor did something that violated every principle of space combat the Galactic Council had ever encountered. It ran, but not in the way Kess expected. Instead of fleeing in a straight line, the human ship began a complex series of maneuvers that seemed to defy both physics and tactical sense. It dove toward the nearest planet, using the gravity well to slingshot around behind the alien formation. "They're moving toward the gas giant," reported Tactical Officer Vex aboard Kess's flagship. "Their trajectory makes no sense. They'll be caught in the gravity well." "Follow them," Kess ordered. "All ships maintain formation," but as the Galactic Council fleet moved to intercept, the Endeavor did something unprecedented. It dove directly into the gas giant's atmosphere. "Commander, they've entered the planet's storm system," Vex reported, his voice filled with disbelief. "No vessel can survive those atmospheric pressures." For 10 minutes, the Endeavor disappeared from their sensors entirely. Kess was beginning to think the humans had committed suicide rather than face capture when her tactical officer shouted in alarm. "Commander, energy spike from the planet's northern hemisphere." The Endeavor erupted from the gas giant's atmosphere, like a bullet from a gun, its hull glowing from atmospheric friction. But it wasn't alone. The ship had somehow managed to harvest and compress vast quantities of the planet's hydrogen-rich atmosphere, creating a makeshift cloaking field that rendered it nearly invisible to the alien fleet's sensors. "Impossible," Kess whispered. What followed was a cat-and-mouse game that lasted for 6 hours. The Endeavor, outnumbered and outgunned, used every natural phenomenon in the system to its advantage. It hid in asteroid fields, used solar radiation to mask its energy signature, and employed gravitational anomalies to confuse the alien sensors. But the most shocking moment came when Kess finally managed to corner the human ship near the system's outer rim. As her fleet closed in for the kill, the Endeavor suddenly accelerated directly toward Kess's flagship. "They're on a suicide run," Vex announced. "Impact in 30 seconds. All batteries, open fire." The alien fleet unleashed a barrage of energy weapons that should have vaporized the human ship instantly. But at the last moment, the Endeavor executed a maneuver that left the entire Galactic Council fleet stunned. Using a technique that human, pilots called threading the needle, the Endeavor flew directly through the gap between two alien vessels, so close that its hull actually scraped against their shields. The maneuver was so unexpected, so impossibly precise, that several of the alien ships accidentally fired on each other in their attempt to hit the human vessel. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the Endeavor was gone, disappearing into hyperspace with a final transmission from Captain Chen. "Tell your superiors that humanity remembers this day. Tell them we know who our friends are, and who they aren't." In the aftermath, as Fleet Commander Kess surveyed the damage to her ships, 3 vessels with hull breaches, 2 with damaged weapon systems, and her own flagship's pride irreparably wounded, she began to understand what Ambassador Zix had been trying to tell the Council. The humans hadn't won the engagement. They had been outnumbered, outgunned, and ultimately forced to flee. But they had accomplished something far more dangerous than victory. They had survived. And in surviving, they had learned. They had studied Galactic Council tactics, weapons, and technology. They had mapped the alien fleet's capabilities and weaknesses. Most importantly, they had sent a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity would not go quietly into the night. The war had begun, and the Galactic Council didn't even realize it yet. Chapter 3. The Human Response Admiral Marcus Webb stood before the emergency session of the United Earth Defense Council, his weathered face grim as he reviewed the tactical data from the Endeavor's encounter. The room was packed with military leaders, scientists, and politicians all waiting for his assessment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Webb began, his voice carrying the weight of 40 years of military service, "we are not alone in the universe. And we are not welcome." The holographic display behind him showed the complete sensor logs from Captain Chen's engagement with the Galactic Council fleet. The energy signatures, ship configurations, and tactical data painted a clear picture of humanity's situation. The alien fleet that intercepted the Endeavor represents a military force beyond anything we've ever encountered. Their technology is centuries ahead of ours. Their ships are larger, faster, and more heavily armed than anything in our fleet. Secretary of Defense Maria Santos leaned forward in her chair. "Admiral, what's your assessment of our defensive capabilities?" Webb's expression darkened. "Madam Secretary, in a conventional engagement we would lose badly. Our entire fleet couldn't stand against what Captain Chen faced with just one ship." A murmur of concern rippled through the room. President Harrison, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Then what do you recommend, Admiral? Surrender?" Webb smiled for the first time since entering the room. It was not a pleasant smile. "Mr. President, I recommend we do what humans do best. We adapt." The Admiral activated a new display, showing a map of human-controlled space. Earth sat at the center, surrounded by the 17 colony worlds humanity had established in the past 50 years. The aliens made one critical mistake in their assessment of our capabilities. They judged us by their own standards. They see warfare as a formal affair, fleet engagements, honorable combat, predictable tactics. Dr. Elizabeth Croft, the head of the Strategic Intelligence Division, stood up. "Admiral, I've analyzed the alien communication protocols. They seem to operate under a code of conduct that emphasizes direct confrontation and established rules of engagement." "Exactly," Webb replied. "They fight like gentlemen. We fight like humans." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. General Patricia Vance, head of Special Operations Command, was the first to speak. "You're talking about asymmetric warfare." "I'm talking about survival," Webb corrected. "The aliens have superior technology, but they've made the same mistake every superior force in human history has made. They've underestimated their opponents." Webb changed the display again, showing historical examples of asymmetric conflicts throughout human history. The American Revolution, the Vietnam War, the Afghan resistance, all cases where technologically superior forces had been defeated by determined, adaptive enemies. The Galactic Council controls the galaxy through overwhelming technological superiority and conventional military might. But they've never faced an enemy like us. They've never encountered a species that views warfare as problem-solving rather than a contest of honor. Dr. Croft accessed her datapad and projected new information onto the main display. "I've been analyzing the alien ship configurations. Their designs prioritize heavy weapons and armor, but they have significant blind spots in their sensor arrays. They also seem to rely heavily on long-range engagements, which suggests they've never had to deal with an enemy willing to get in close," General Vance added, her tactical mind already working through possibilities. President Harrison looked around the room. "What exactly are you all proposing?" Admiral Webb stepped forward. "Mr. President, we can't match their technology, but we can make them fight our kind of war. We use hit-and-run tactics, strike from unexpected angles, force them to chase us, through environments where their size and firepower become disadvantages rather than assets." "You're talking about guerrilla warfare in space," Secretary Santos observed. "I'm talking about making the galaxy too expensive for them to control," Webb replied. "Every time they send a fleet after us, we make them pay a price. Every time they establish a garrison, we find a way to hit them where they're weak. We don't try to win battles. We make them lose the war." Dr. Croft brought up another display showing the alien fleet's tactical formation from the Endeavour encounter. Their ships moved in rigid formations with predetermined roles and responsibilities. They didn't adapt to Captain Chen's unconventional tactics. That suggests a military doctrine based on overwhelming force rather than flexibility. Plus, General Vance added, they were clearly expecting surrender. When we didn't comply with their demands, they seemed uncertain. That's a psychological advantage we can exploit. President Harrison stood up, pacing to the window that looked out over New Geneva's skyline. What you're describing sounds like a recipe for a very long, very bloody conflict. Yes, sir, Admiral Webb agreed. But it's also our only chance of survival as a free species. The president turned back to the room. What do you need? Webb had clearly been prepared for this question. First, we need to accelerate the colonization program. Every human settlement represents a potential base of operations, a place where alien forces will have to come to us and fight on our terms. Second, we need to completely restructure our military doctrine. Forget large fleet engagements. We need small, fast ships that can strike quickly and disappear. We need crews trained in unconventional tactics. Third, we need intelligence. We need to know everything about these aliens, their technology, their politics, their psychology. We need to understand their weaknesses better than they understand ours. Dr. Croft nodded. I can redirect our xenobiology research toward military applications. If we can understand how they think, we can predict how they'll react. General Vance was already making notes. I'll need to completely revamp our training programs. We'll need to prepare our people for the kind of warfare that hasn't been seen since the early colonial period. President Harrison looked around the room one more time. Are we all in agreement? This is the path we want to take? The vote was unanimous. As the meeting broke up and the various department heads began planning humanity's response to the alien threat, Admiral Webb remained behind, staring at the tactical displays. Secretary Santos approached him. Marcus, do you really think we can win this? Webb was quiet for a long moment. Maria, in 1939, the British Empire faced an enemy with superior technology, better training, and overwhelming numerical advantage. Everyone said they couldn't win. But they had allies, Santos pointed out. Eventually, Webb agreed. But first they had to prove they were worth allying with. They had to show they couldn't be beaten easily, that supporting them was a worthwhile investment. He gestured to the display showing the locations of the 17 colony worlds. The Yao. Aliens think they're dealing with a primitive species that will either surrender or be quickly defeated. They're about to learn the same lesson that every enemy of humanity has learned throughout our history. Which is? Admiral Webb's smile was cold and determined. That we don't know how to quit. 6 months later, the first human guerrilla strike hit a Galactic Council supply convoy in the Rigel sector. The attack was swift, precise, and completely unexpected. 3 supply ships were destroyed, their cargoes captured, and the escorting warships left undamaged but humiliated. The message that accompanied the attack was simple. This is what asymmetric warfare looks like. Get used to it. The Galactic Council's response was predictable. They sent a larger fleet to patrol the trade routes. But humanity's response was not what they expected. The humans didn't try to fight the larger fleet directly. Instead, they hit targets the aliens hadn't even considered vulnerable. Communication relays, mining operations, refueling stations. Within a year, maintaining control over the Outer Rim territories had become a significant drain on Galactic Council resources. Fleet Command was forced to station permanent garrisons at dozens of locations that had never needed protection before. And still, the humans kept adapting, evolving, finding new ways to make the cost of occupation higher than the benefits of control. The galaxy was learning a lesson that would reshape the balance of power for generations to come. Never underestimate the ingenuity of a species fighting for its survival. Chapter 4. The Turning Point. 2 years into what the Galactic Council had optimistically called the Human Pacification Campaign, Fleet Admiral Kess stood in her command center staring at reports that made no sense according to everything she knew about warfare. The humans were losing. By every metric that mattered, territory controlled, ships destroyed, battles won, the Galactic Council was utterly dominant. Human forces had been driven from 3 star systems, their fleets scattered, their colonies evacuated. So why did Kes feel like she was the one being defeated? Admiral, her aide, Commander Vex, approached with the daily casualty reports. We've lost another supply convoy in the Centauri sector. 18 ships destroyed, no survivors. Kes took the report without looking at it. She had memorized the pattern by now. The humans would strike at what appeared to be random targets: supply convoys, communication arrays, refueling stations, mining operations. Never anything that seemed strategically important. Never anything that would force a decisive battle. How many ships did we lose hunting them? None, Admiral. They were gone before our response fleet arrived. And the patrol fleet? Damaged their engines trying to pursue through the asteroid field. They'll need 2 weeks for repairs. Kes finally looked at the report. In the margins, someone had written a running tally of resources expended versus damage inflicted. The numbers were not encouraging. Commander, summon the sector commanders. I want a full strategic assessment. An hour later, Kes faced her senior officers around the holographic battle display. The map showed the current state of the war, with Galactic Council forces controlling most of the inhabited systems and human forces reduced to scattered cells operating from hidden bases. Gentlemen, we are winning this war, Kes began. Our forces control 90% of inhabited space in this sector. Human military capacity has been reduced to less than 20% of their pre-war strength. Their colonies have been evacuated or destroyed. By any reasonable measure, we have achieved victory. She paused, letting that sink in before continuing. So, why are our supply lines constantly under attack? Why do we need 3 times as many ships to maintain control now as we did at the beginning of the campaign? Why are our maintenance costs exceeding our operational budget? The silence that followed was telling. Finally, Commander Thane of the 3rd Fleet spoke up. Admiral, the humans are not fighting a conventional war. They're not trying to hold territory or engage our fleets directly. They're treating this as a commercial enterprise. Explain. Every attack they make is designed to cost us more than it costs them. They hit soft targets that are expensive to defend, but easy to replace. They force us to spread our forces thin, protecting assets that aren't militarily significant, but are economically vital. Another officer, Captain Zorax, leaned forward. It's worse than that, Admiral. They're learning from every engagement. Each attack is more sophisticated than the last. They're using our own tactics against us. Kes activated a new display showing the evolution of human tactics over the past 2 years. The progression was unsettling. Early attacks had been crude but effective. Recent attacks showed a level of strategic sophistication that rivaled the best Galactic Council military minds. How are they improving so quickly? They adapt, Commander Vex replied. Every time we change our procedures, they find a new way to exploit the changes. It's like fighting an opponent who learns faster than we can teach. Captain Zorax brought up a specific example. Last month, we changed our convoy escort protocols to counter their hit-and-run tactics. Within a week, they had developed new strategies that rendered the changes useless. It took us months to develop those protocols. It took them days to counter them. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just fighting a military force. They were fighting a species that treated warfare as an evolutionary. Our process with each engagement serving as a learning opportunity. Admiral, Commander Thane said quietly, I've been reviewing the original intelligence reports on human society. There's something we missed. Kes gestured for him to continue. Humans don't just adapt to their environment. They modify their environment to suit their needs. Their entire technological development is based on finding solutions to impossible problems. They don't accept limitations. They find ways around them. He brought up historical data from Earth's databases, information the Galactic Council had dismissed as irrelevant during their initial assessment. Look at their response to their planet's ice ages. Instead of migrating to warmer climates, they invented agriculture, domesticated animals, developed tools to survive in hostile environments. When their early civilizations faced resource scarcity, They didn't fight over existing resources. They found new ones, developed new technologies, expanded into previously uninhabitable regions. The display shifted to show humanity's expansion into space. When Earth's resources became insufficient, they didn't fight over what remained. They went to space. When they encountered obstacles to interstellar travel, they didn't accept the limitations. They developed faster-than-light drives in a fraction of the time it took most species. Kes stared at the data, pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to fall into place. You're saying this is normal behavior for them? I'm saying we're not dealing with a military problem, Admiral. We're dealing with a species that views our entire civilization as just another hostile environment to be adapted to and eventually controlled. Another display showed the current status of human settlement patterns. Despite being defeated in the conventional sense, human colonies were appearing in systems the Galactic Council had never even surveyed. They were establishing bases in asteroid fields on dead worlds in the void between stars, anywhere the Council forces couldn't or wouldn't go. They're not trying to beat us, Admiral, Captain Zorax observed. They're trying to outlast us. The realization hit Kes like a physical blow. The humans weren't fighting to win battles or capture territory. They were fighting to survive as a species, and they were treating the entire galaxy as a laboratory for developing the skills and technologies they needed to eventually surpass their enemies. How long can we maintain the current operational tempo? Kes asked. Commander Vex consulted his datapad. At current resource expenditure rates, Fleet Command estimates we can maintain full operational capacity for perhaps another 2 years. After that, we'll be forced to reduce our presence in the outer sectors, Kes finished, which will give the humans more room to operate and more time to develop new capabilities, Thane added grimly. Kes stood up, pacing to the large window that showed the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, human ships were moving through the darkness, carrying refugees from destroyed colonies to new homes in systems the Galactic Council had never heard of. Somewhere out there, human engineers were studying captured Council technology, finding ways to improve it, adapt it, turn it into something new. What are our options? The silence that followed told her everything she needed to know. They could continue the current strategy, slowly bleeding resources while the humans grew stronger. They could attempt a massive offensive designed to eliminate the human species entirely, something that would require resources the Council couldn't spare and would likely fail against an enemy that had become expert at avoiding decisive battles. Or, they could attempt something that no Galactic Council force had ever considered before. Admiral, Commander Vex said hesitantly, there is one possibility we haven't discussed. I'm listening. We could try to negotiate. The suggestion hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Negotiate with primitives? Treat with a species that should have been grateful to be offered a place in the galactic community? But as Kes looked at the strategic displays, at the cost assessments, at the casualty reports, she began to wonder if her pride was worth the slow death of the Galactic Council's military supremacy. Contact Fleet Command, she said finally. Tell them I need to speak with the Council directly. 3 days later, Kes received her reply. The Galactic Council's response was predictable, dismissive, and utterly predictable. Continue the campaign. Increase the pressure. Victory was inevitable. But as Kes read the message, she noticed something that chilled her to her core. The order was signed by only 8 Council members. The other 4 had abstained from voting. For the first time in galactic history, the Galactic Council was not unanimous. The humans had done more than survive their initial encounter with galactic civilization. They had introduced doubt into a system that had operated on absolute certainty for millennia. And doubt, as any student of human history could tell you, was the first step toward revolution. Epilogue. The new galaxy 5 years after the first contact incident, Ambassador Zix stood once again in the crystal chamber of the Galactic Council. But, this time, she was not alone in her warnings. The chamber was only half full. 4 member species had withdrawn from the Council entirely, citing irreconcilable differences over the handling of the human question. 3 others had reduced their participation to observer status. The great alliance that had maintained galactic order for over 1,000 years was fracturing. The humans have established colonies in 47 systems, Zix reported to the remaining council members. They have made contact with 18 species that were previously unknown to us. 7 of those species have signed what the humans call mutual defense agreements. General Threx, now looking much older and more tired than when he had dismissed Zix's warnings 5 years earlier, shifted uncomfortably in his throne. Their military capacity remains limited. Our intelligence suggests they have fewer than 200 ships capable of interstellar combat. That we know of, Zix corrected. General, the humans have become very good at hiding things from us. Every time we think we understand their capabilities, they surprise us with something new. She activated a holographic display showing recent intelligence reports. The images showed human settlements in locations that should have been impossible to inhabit. Space stations built inside asteroids, underground cities on dead worlds, mobile colonies that moved constantly through the void. They have developed technology we do not understand. Their ships use propulsion systems that our best scientists cannot explain. Their weapons are crude but effective. And their tactics. The display shifted to show recent engagements between human forces and various council fleets. In every case, the humans had achieved their objectives despite being outnumbered and outgunned. They do not fight to win battles. They fight to accomplish goals. The distinction is important. When they attack our supply convoys, they are not trying to destroy our fleets. They are trying to make it more expensive for us to maintain our presence in contested areas. Ambassador Quinn, whose translucent form had grown noticeably dimmer over the past few years, spoke up. What are you suggesting, Zix? I am suggesting that we are no longer dealing with a problem that can be solved through military force. The humans have become a permanent feature of the galactic landscape. The question is not whether we can defeat them. The question is whether we can coexist with them. The chamber erupted in protests. The remaining hardliners among the council members shouted about maintaining galactic order, about the precedent that negotiating with primitives would set, about the dignity of ancient civilizations. But Zix noticed that not everyone was protesting. Some council members sat in thoughtful silence considering the implications of her words. The humans have sent a communication, she continued, raising her voice above the din. They are offering to negotiate a formal peace treaty. The protests died away as the significance of this announcement sank in. In galactic history, primitive species did not offer treaties to the Galactic Council. They were offered the opportunity to join the galactic community on the Council's terms, or they were pacified. What are their terms? General Threx asked, his voice heavy with resignation. Zix activated another display, showing the human proposal. It was surprisingly sophisticated, addressing trade rights, territorial boundaries, mutual defense obligations, and technology sharing agreements. They want recognition as a sovereign interstellar power with the right to expand into unclaimed territories. They want guaranteed access to galactic trade networks. They want representation in any galactic governing body that affects their interests. And in return, they offer to respect the territorial claims of council member species, to share certain technologies they have developed, and to provide military assistance against external threats to galactic stability. The silence that followed was profound. The humans were not asking to join the galactic community as junior partners. They were demanding to be treated as equals. This is unprecedented, General Threx said finally. Yes, Zix agreed. Everything about the humans is unprecedented. That is what I have been trying to tell you for 5 years. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some council members argued for rejecting the human proposal and continuing the military campaign. Others suggested that negotiation might be preferable to the slow bleeding of resources that the current conflict represented. In the end, the vote was closer than anyone had expected. By a margin of just 1 vote, the Galactic Council agreed to begin negotiations with the human delegation. 3 months later, the first galactic accords were signed in neutral space, aboard a human vessel that had been specifically constructed for the occasion. The ship itself was a masterpiece of hybrid technology. human engineering principles combined with materials and techniques learned from captured Council technology. Captain Sarah Chen, now promoted to Admiral and serving as humanity's chief military representative, stood beside Secretary of State Margaret Foster as the documents were signed. Across the table, Ambassador Zix and Fleet Admiral Kess represented the Galactic Council. The signing ceremony was brief and formal, but the implications were staggering. For the first time in galactic history, the Council had negotiated with a species as equals rather than offering them membership as subordinates. "This is not an end," Admiral Chen said as the documents were sealed with quantum encryption. "This is a beginning." Zix, whose warnings had been ignored 5 years earlier, nodded slowly. "Admiral, your species has accomplished something remarkable. You have forced the galaxy to evolve." Fleet Admiral Kess, still uncomfortable with the entire process, spoke with grudging respect. "You fought well, Admiral. Your people are formidable opponents." Chen smiled. "We prefer to think of ourselves as adaptable allies, Admiral Kess. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are threats out there that none of us have encountered yet. When those threats emerge, you'll want humans fighting beside you, not against you." As the human delegation prepared to leave, Zix approached Chen privately. "Admiral, may I ask you something?" "Of course. When your ship first encountered our fleet, you could have surrendered. Your crew would have been treated well eventually, released. Your species would have been offered a place in the galactic community. Why did you choose to fight?" Chen considered the question for a long moment. "Ambassador, in human history, we have a saying. Those who would trade freedom for security deserve neither. We didn't know what kind of people you were, what your intentions truly were. All we knew was that you were demanding our surrender, before we had even had a conversation." She paused, looking out at the stars through the ship's main viewing port. "Humans have learned through bitter experience that freedom is not something that can be given by others. It must be claimed, defended, and earned. We couldn't accept membership in your community until we had proven we deserved to be treated as equals." Zix's crystalline skin flickered with what might have been understanding. "And now? Now we can begin to build something new together. A galaxy where different species can coexist without one dominating the others. A community based on mutual respect rather than technological superiority." As the human vessel departed, carrying the signed accords back to Earth, Zix remained at the viewing port, watching the ship disappear into hyperspace. Around her, the galaxy was already changing. The news of the accords spread quickly through the galactic communication networks. Species that had been conquered or absorbed by the Council began to demand similar treatment. Trade agreements that had favored Council member species for centuries were suddenly open for renegotiation. The humans had done more than survive their first contact with galactic civilization. They had introduced concepts that would reshape the entire structure of interstellar relations. Within a decade, the old Galactic Council would be replaced by the Galactic Federation, a more democratic organization where species earned their voice through contribution rather than conquest. Humans would serve not as members but as mediators, helping other species navigate the transition from the old order to the new. The galaxy that Ambassador Zix had warned about, a galaxy where humans were free to pursue their own path, had come to pass. But instead of the chaos and destruction that many had feared, humanity's influence had brought something unexpected: progress. The species that had survived ice ages and asteroid impacts, that had turned a hostile planet into a garden and then reached for the stars, had looked at an ancient galactic civilization and seen not an insurmountable obstacle, but simply another problem to be solved. And as any student of human history could have predicted, they had found a solution that no one else had even considered possible. In the end, the Galactic Council's warning about humans had been both completely accurate and entirely wrong. Humans were indeed dangerous, but not in the way anyone had expected. They were dangerous because they brought change to a galaxy that had been static for millennia. They were dangerous because they refused to accept that problems were unsolvable, that conflicts were inevitable, that the strong would always dominate the weak. Most dangerous of all, They had proven that a single species, no matter how primitive or outnumbered, could reshape the destiny of an entire galaxy, simply by refusing to give up. The warning had been ignored, and the aliens had indeed paid a price. But in the end, it was a price that had purchased something far more valuable than military victory. It had purchased the future. The end.